On this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast, I'm speaking with my friend Chris Bates. Chris is an entrepreneur, co-owner of Los Rios Rock School, and founder of Teacher Zone, an all-in-one studio and learning management platform for music lesson businesses. Much of the discussion I had with Chris centered on mindset as a business owner and how that can greatly impact how we approach challenges and growth. That also influences what we want our role to be in our businesses and how closely that can be related to what we want in our personal lives. Stay tuned. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. I'm John Kazicki, and my co-host Mandy York cannot be with us today, but I'm happy to welcome my guest for this episode, Chris Bates. Chris, how are you today?
John, my brother, how are you? I'm great.
I'm doing well. So, going to give our listeners who don't know you a little bit of background. Chris, you are an entrepreneur. You've worked in and started companies in real estate and other industries. You are co-owner of Los Rios Rock School in California. You are the founder and co-owner of Teacher Zone, correct? Which is a kind of an all-in-one studio management and learning management platform for lesson businesses. So I think some of our listeners may know you from that. I think that's key with what we're going to talk about today also, because with Teacher Zone, one of the things you're really doing is you're kind of empowering studio owners to streamline their businesses, to focus on bigger picture things rather than working in spreadsheets all day or tracking down payments. You're a musician, you're a drummer. I think you told me you taught drum lessons at a young age, but you kind of come to the lesson business from a different place in a lot of ways, I think. And that's why I think your experience and your insight is so valuable, because most studio owners come from first being a musician, then being a teacher, then opening their studio, and then becoming business owners. And I think what that does is that puts you so close to everything in your business that it's hard to sometimes see the big picture. So that's the intro. Am I missing anything? I mean, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff.
Husband and father.
Yeah.
Those are obviously what keeps me going and waking up every day and trying to give it my all. So gotta say that. I have two boys in college now, so we're in that fun new phase. Actually, you know what's funny, John, is I feel I don't know. You guys aren't quite there yet, but I kind of feel like we feel like we're in our 20s again, which has really been invigorated us with the businesses and stuff too, which is really fun.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, it's a new chapter. So anyways, yeah, also happily married 25 years this year.
Congrats. So what I thought we would talk about, and the reason I wanted to talk with you, is because, again, going back to the idea of how so many lesson studio owners and lesson business owners come to be owners, is from kind of doing the thing that they ultimately are in charge of kind of hiring instructors to do, or creating this bigger thing to provide the service. And where I think your insight would be really valuable is for people who are maybe in that solo teacher position right now and thinking they want to grow. Or maybe they do have a lesson studio that they've been running for a while and they want to grow it bigger. And you and I have talked before on the phone and whatnot about like mindset. And I think a lot of that comes from being in the right mindset. And you had mentioned to me earlier the concept of working in your business and working versus working on your business. And that comes from, I mean, where I heard it was the E-Myth, correct?
Yes, Michael Gerber. And I heard it years ago before I had read the E-Myth. I was also on the board in Entrepreneurs Organization for 10 years, which is a great organization because I always say it's AA for business owners. It's a way for business owners to get together and just mind share on challenges and stuff. And one of my dear friends who now lives in North Carolina, Tony Wong, we call him Yoda because he's so smart. And he mentioned that to us, the in versus on. And he also said something that we were like, what? He's like, basically that we weren't real business owners, that we were lifestyle business owners for the most part, which was interesting to me that he had made a distinction between the in versus on and the lifestyle business versus actual business owner. And so we can define that, for listeners as well, just to sort of, so it gives us perspective, because it was kind of hit us all. Oh, he's right. How I see myself may not be actually how I behave.
Interesting. Yeah. And so to kind of expand on the lifestyle business thing, I would say that, I know for me personally, and I would guess that for most studio owners, part of why we do this is our passion for the craft, our passion for music, our passion for sharing that, right? So we want to still have that as part of our lives, but it's the old trope, right? Like if you make a business out of your hobby, well, are you still going to love the hobby, right? Because then it becomes your job. There's the rub with the lifestyle business, right?
Right. How many chefs still cook at home?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to share a story with you to sort of set this up. The idea of what does it mean to work in your business versus working on your business, and you had mentioned to me the idea of like strategic planning, and I think you know this about me, but the Michigan Rock School is actually my second venture, my second music school. I started my first music school when I lived in North Carolina. And before I started, I had this big vision of what I wanted to do. I wanted to have this really cool interactive experience for students. I wanted to focus on performances and bands, offering that as a main service, but also paired with private lessons. When I started the business, it was just me. I rented a single room. And after a few months, I was like, okay, if I'm going to make this vision a reality, I need a bigger space. I have to hire some other instructors because I can't do everything myself. So I did that. And again, my goal was to create this larger thing. So as soon as I got that bigger space and I hired that other instructor, really quick, I realized like, oh my gosh, my rent is higher. I've got to make sure that I can pay for this rent, and I've got to make sure my instructors are being compensated. I've got to get some more students in here. And the quickest way to do that was to get more private lesson students. And every step along the way, as I made some sort of like step towards growth, I kind of fell back to this idea of like, I got to get this many more private students, right? To finance this next thing. And it kind of became this little trap where I was so focused on getting the private students because I needed them to finance the next big step. I never really realized what I wanted to do with the big picture. So ultimately, I ran that business for about 5 years, moderately successful with the bands, but definitely not what I wanted it to be. Started Michigan Rock School, and the first thing I did was I sat down and I thought, what were those traps that I fell into that prevented me from creating this amazing band program?
Brilliant.
And the realization was, well, I was collecting private lesson students just to finance what I wanted to do. It didn't matter if they were the right students. It didn't matter if they were interested in this bigger picture, which was the interaction, the community, and the bands. So I made a conscious effort when I started Michigan Rock School, the second venture, not to fall into that trap. And I knew it might meant slower growth, but it was going to result in the realization of this bigger picture.
I love it. That's Well, and the fact that you learn from your mistakes, I mean, I've repeated mine too many times. So good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I've done that too.
We always like kind of gravitate towards what feels comfortable. And I think that's true. And you actually articulated one of the biggest problems of being in business at all is, doing the business. It's like as soon as there's business to do, then it becomes much harder to have vision or, create something that's more in alignment maybe with what you hoped to at the beginning. You get so busy, basically.
Sure.
It's a bandwidth issue, really. We all only have so much bandwidth. And it's chronic. I mean, listen, if you guys haven't read The E-Myth, Michael Gerber, it's The Entrepreneurial Myth. It's a great book because it really talks about all of us in the lesson business. Everybody that teaches music, you pretty much are doing what he talks about, which is that the business owners of the world, as we all kind of start out as small businesses, we're basically taking a talent or a skill that we had or something that we are really passionate about, and then we're turning that into a business, initially a lifestyle business. Yep. So all of us start this way typically. I mean, it's rare that you don't, unless it's your, like in my case, my 7th business. So I'm finally thinking this way like you did, where you, it's like the more you do it, the more you're like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
But all of us start that way. I started that way with my first band in Hollywood, and that morphed into owning real estate offices later on because I wasn't bright enough to figure out how to have the music career I desired. I actually forgot that I used to teach. It's just so ironic now because I'm so involved in teaching day to day with my staff and everybody. I forgot how much I loved it too. Like it's such a special, and I think that's the gift really of the music industry changing from selling records, to the digital, is it's so much harder to make money off your music that I feel like the youth have really benefited. I'll bet more kids are being mentored now than, 30 years ago by far.
Interesting.
So it's actually in a neat way, more people will be playing because of it. More people will be enjoying music and transforming others because of it, which is just, I love.
Well, okay. And you were talking about the E-Myth, and one point that I think I want to clarify is in the E-Myth, Gerber talks about 3 categories, right? He talks about I believe it's the technician, right? Is it the manager and the entrepreneur? Yep. Yeah. And I think we all come to these businesses as the technician who decides, okay, I'm going to also take on the role of the manager and dip my toe in the water of the entrepreneur, possibly. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, we all start out as the technician. The question is, how much do you carry of your technician side? So in other words, let's say you're an incredible guitar teacher or incredible vocal coach. Do you always maintain that part of your business where you're still a technician, or do you transition out of it? And what most people do that he talks about, which is the whole working in, is that we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we're essentially stuck. And we're stuck. We're still a technician, and we're trying to do some managerial, which would be like systems. And, managerial tasks is basically like keeping people accountable, training staff, systems, playbooks, operating procedures, things like that.
Right.
And an entrepreneur would be more growth-minded, vision, big picture, that kind of thing. So what we try to do is we try to stuff it all into this working in your box. But if you're teaching, for a lot of people, 30 hours a week,
yes,
doing those other things is exhausting, right? But let's be realistic.
And that's exactly where I was in that, in my story. I was teaching. I realized I just gave myself another job, which is being a manager also. And I didn't stop teaching, right? I kept teaching because, again, I need to grow this thing. I need to get more students. I need to finance the next steps. So I took on 2 jobs without that that third aspect of the strategic planning, which is the entrepreneurial aspect.
Common. I mean, all of us do. I mean, listen, for any of you out there listening to this that have your own thing, whether it's just you or you have multiple teachers and stuff, you're different. You just are.
Yes.
A lot of people just are so risk averse, they will never put themselves basically in that vulnerable position is the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so bravo to anyone listening to this that has the courage, because it takes courage. And I believe that all entrepreneurs are heroes. So whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a bigger business, arbitrary, because you might be a solopreneur making more money than someone with a bigger business.
Sure.
And to me, money at the end of the day, a lot of it is about impact. It's a metaphor for helping people. So with that said, I think the important distinction with working in versus on is that it can't be neglected. The on your business, so flying 10,000 feet and being more strategic, thinking about the future, that kind of thing, that can't be neglected. But if you want to maintain your technician status because you really enjoy it, or you enjoy the income, because you can have a higher income. This is a distinction that I want to make for anybody that hasn't thought about this. So when the higher up the chain you get towards entrepreneur, you don't actually have a job by the time you become a full entrepreneur, right? You now are more akin to an investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where basically you're not required for the business to operate.
Mm-hmm.
The lower down the chain you go for technician, you're involved in everything. And so it feels good because you're involved in everything, but it's stressful. You're out of time, and this is where people tend to get stuck. And that's where lifestyle businesses tend to just be about you and your lifestyle, because it's probably a time thing. If I'm nice to all of us, it probably is just that. You get so stuck time-wise, you just don't have time to ever transition in any way. So the discussion today, in my mind, is just to sort of lay it out there so all of us can realize that, hey, if you want to still teach guitar, and that's really all you're passionate about, I've seen a lot of amazing businesses around the world still do that. Mm-hmm. But they've been able to grow because they delegated the entrepreneurial or the management tasks to others.
Right.
And that's okay.
So I think that's super important to get, right? Like, you are not saying you have to choose between being a teacher or being a manager or being the big picture person and guiding the business. You're not saying you have to choose between one of those three. You can choose how much of each bucket you want to allocate your time, right? If you want to teach one day a week because you love it and you're passionate about it, and then you want to focus the rest of the week on like managing and big picture stuff, you can.
You might need some help. Didn't you say you're still teaching some groups?
I still teach one group, every week, because I love getting in there with the students and working with them. And I think that also helps me to sort of understand, when I see how I do that, I can help my instructors and my other band coaches with their training. But that's a choice that I made to continue to do this. And I didn't have to give it up completely. I can make the rules. Again, this is like, I think where
that's where, when I said lifestyle earlier, it used to, in my mind, I saw it kind of bad because I'm like, oh, that just means small. And it's like, no.
Well, because your friend called it not a real business, right?
and so, but over the years, I've seen it differently in that, I think all of us, at the end of the day, it's about survival initially, and it's about survival in a way that we're passionate about, right? So it's like, oh, wow. Because that's why everyone, let's face it, if you're listening to this, just know that people in your life are probably jealous of you because you're living a lifestyle they wish they could.
Yeah.
And so that is awesome. And bravo for anybody that is able to, make a business out of their passion. The simple question, though, is that if something were to happen to any of us, would the business continue? Or is it totally predicated on us? Now, does it have to? No, you could just have a business that is, the John Show, and that's it. And you just delegate around you some tasks for marketing and sales and an administration, all that around your business, around your teaching. And that's a way to do it. And there's nothing right or wrong about any of the ways. It's how do you want your life and to look? And so basically thinking big picture allows you to make those decisions. What do you want it to look like?
So I've long felt that there is a misconception in business, but definitely in our lesson businesses also, surrounding growth and how to measure growth. Now, there are obviously like really simple metrics to measure growth. How many students how many more students do I have this month versus last month, right? How much more revenue am I making? Which are absolutely valid. And I think those could and should come into the conversation. But what is the cost associated with that, right? If you are all of a sudden working 4 days a week, 12-hour days, or 5 days a week or 6 days a week, right? Is that the kind of growth that you want? And I think, the perception is like, well, yeah, we measure growth by student numbers, but that's where it gets tricky. Is your life better for that growth, or are you basically trading like more of your time to see that growth? And so that's the expense.
Yeah. I mean, in the middle of my career, when I owned a global software company called Asia Marketing, and I owned a printing operation, and we had staff all over the world and all this stuff, it was kind of what I had dreamed for. And then I looked in the mirror and like, I was like, oh my gosh, like I never get to see my kids. I'm never home. Like, so the sacrifice, it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
I got what I had dreamed for, and it wasn't what I thought. And when I sold that company, I'll never forget, I sat down with my now freshman in college son, Hudson, and Hudson's a little redhead, and at the time he had that gravelly little voice. And when we're shooting hoops outside, and I'm like, your dad's thinking about selling the company. And he's like, really? Why, Dad? And I'm like, so I can hang out with you. And so we're playing. And then he grabs the ball about halfway through and he looks at me and he goes, bottom line, we going to see you more or what? Like, you just made my decision for me. Like, wow,
So I love that. I love that question, because I want to give examples. To me, when you said that, that's growth, right? That's growth, not necessarily in terms of like I made this many more sales, but you looked at personal growth. You looked at how much personal time you're gaining, right? So that is a measure of growth, right? If you're working 6 days a week and you say, I want to work 5 days a week by the end of this year, I don't think that should be looked at as, well, yeah, it's cutting back. And that's what we think about. We think about, I'm cutting back, right? But there is a gain there. That is growth. If you are able to look at your business and make a plan so that, okay, by the end of this year, I'm going to work 5 days a week. By the middle of next year, I'm going to work 4 days a week.
Yes.
By the end of next year, I'm going to work 3 days a week, right? If you can maintain your lifestyle and those are your gains, that counts as growth.
My old business my Tyler and I had a coach the last number of years. His name is Dan Martell. And Dan is a big coach out there, and he wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. And that's a big part of it, right? And Dan has a quote that I now totally embody and love. And the quote, I'll butcher it, but basically it's, what did he say? Well, this is on working on your business. Having others do the work 70% as good as you is 100% freaking awesome. And so the buy back your time mentality is like, what are the tasks that you may not be great at? What are the tasks that have to get done regardless, that you isn't your superpower, the best use of your time? and how can you get them done? It doesn't have to be hiring someone. It could also be utilizing tools or systems. They could be using fractional professionals, like bookkeepers in a fractional way or things like that. The question is that how can you delegate those tasks that aren't the best, or like you said, maybe it's not best. Maybe it's just you don't want to spend your time on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm good at it. I don't want to do it though.
So that's
okay.
all related. Yeah. And that's all related to growth. That's all related to strategic planning.
And the other thing with growth too, something that you made me think of when you mentioned it. So you can grow, like you said, you could say, hey, I'm growing because I'm buying back my personal time. Mm-hmm. That's a growth. Absolutely. Great distinction. Another growth to think about in the lesson business isn't that you are going to keep growing to infinity like some businesses try to do. It's more, can you create a sustainable business? Because if you think about Disney, I don't know if you've seen them, but there is on the Disney Channel, there's some cool things where they actually show you how they made the rides.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
My wife and I binged them recently, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. But one of the things that he was big on was people returning to the park. So it's the same customer, right? It's not like growth. It's literally just our version of a student coming back all the time, for a number of years. And so his mindset was, well, we better always, he actually said that over and over. The one thing you'll know with Disney, anytime you see Disney on it, is you'll know that we're always trying to get better, something like that. We're always, every time you come, we're going to try and have it be a little bit different. So he was trying to inspire people to want to have the experience over and over again as they put, different nuggets here and there and different changes. So the true Disney fans are looking for those things all the time, right? And it becomes, so growth can also be that. It can be sustainability, because with inflation, I'm not an economist, but bottom line with inflation is it's an erosion, right? It's like everything's eroding if you don't maintain it. And so economic inflation is roughly 3 to 4% always, right? I mean, it fluctuates, but over a 30-year period, I think the average is that 3.5%, 4%. So that means that every year, if you're not looking at ways to increase your value so you can up your prices along with inflation, ways to keep having new students come in as old students graduate, potentially, if you're working with kids, you've got like a built-in churn because they're going to leave you when they graduate.
Right.
So knowing that growth for a lot of us is being able to maintain, is to get to a certain level where we can enjoy our work and make a great impact and then maintain it.
So question now, because again, we kind of ventured into the area of growth, but it's still all related to that planning.
Yes.
And
working in versus on is all about that strategic planning.
What advice or what resources or thoughts would you offer, again, to that person who maybe is a solo instructor thinking like, I want to make this thing bigger? My advice first is figure out why. Like, define that. Why do you want to make it bigger? What does that look like to you? Or maybe that person who is in the studio and they want to grow. What is your advice to figure out, like, okay, well, how do I define what I want this to be? How do I develop a plan so that I can take steps toward that?
So off the top of my head, there's 5 things. I was thinking about this and I'm like, okay, what are the 5 things? Because lists are awesome. They force us to. What are the 5 things that we could all kind of focus on for working on our business? Because working in your business, guys, like, just so you know, that parent that just called because their kid's sick, or that teacher that just told you they have a gig last minute and they can't come in or whatever, that is working in your business, okay?
Yeah.
The tuition that didn't go through, the bill that you can't pay because you haven't gotten paid yet, that's the kind of working in your business stresses. It's the billing stuff, the scheduling stuff, the parent communication stuff. It's the staff stuff. It's all of it. So the 5 things to know that you're working on your business, strategy. So we've talked, and we could talk about all five, but strategy, basically thinking about the future, not just about in the right now. Number two, simplification. So it's about being focused and simple in your business practices, because then it's repeatable. I say this all the time to folks. I'm like, listen, we have people come to us and they're so complex. And I'm like, so just understand when you're creating a business, if the more complex you are, the more you need a human. The more simple you are, the more systems and robots and computers can take over.
Sure.
So simplicity is big. So strategic, simplify, sales and marketing. Now I'm realizing it's an alliteration, all S's. The fourth one would be staff. Like, so in other words, staff development, training, that kind of stuff. And then the last one is, we could figure out an S for it, but basically brand versus it just being about you. And this is a hard one, especially for if you're a musician that's been celebrated, because a lot of you out there have had great careers or done great things. And so you've got a name, or you were in a band with a name, or you've done something wonderful. Just know that the more we can make the brand bigger than ourselves, the more opportunities we create for our customers, for our students, and for our staff. So the 5 things: strategic, simplify, sales, staff, growth, and then brand. With that, I was watching, John, I'm addicted to those Kitchen Nightmares and like Bar Rescue and all that stuff. And I'm watching one the other night and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like every music school owner I know. She owns a Southern restaurant, and Ramsey's standing there and he can't believe it. Like that it's actually as bad as they said it was.
Okay.
She won't let her chefs do anything. They're standing there staring at her. And she's like, no, get out of the way. I got it. No, get out of the way. I got it. No, get out of the way. I got it. And so we all say that metaphorically, like I'm too involved. I'm trying to do too much. I'm too whatever. She was like the extreme version where she literally had staff just standing there watching her the whole shift because she just was trying to do everything. That is the ultimate in your business. You're so in it that you just aren't at all on it. And to me, that is toxic. She needs to either delegate the on stuff or create what you and I were saying, more of a hybrid approach.
Right. And that's, I know I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I've fallen into that too. Right. So that's what you were saying about your, I don't know if it was your mentor or your coach who said someone else doing it at 70% as good as you can is 100% awesome. Right. So yeah, it's not going to be like you do it, but it's also like, quick story. I was training one of my band instructors, having him sit in on the band I was coaching a couple of weeks ago, and the kids were rowdy. They were out of control, right? And I kind of lost it. I yelled at them and I was like, "This is what we got to do. We got to do this. We got to get this done." So much so, I was like, "All right, I got to step out of the room because I know I'm not being effective right now." I stepped out of the room, and new band coach, he got it under control. I didn't have to go back in there. So where my head is like, oh, I'm in here because I have to train him. I have to show how it's done. I have to show him how to do this thing the way that I do it so that then he can do it. He'd already figured it out. He had a better handle.
They'll surprise you. Yes. We have that right now. Our director, Phil, is so much better than Tyler and me in that way, because Tyler and I, are very passive aggressive. Like, we both have a similar personality and we just expect it to be done a certain way. And so we won't say anything assuming it is. And then eventually we'll realize it isn't. And then we lose our cool. And, that's a terrible way to, help people grow and learn. So Phil, on the other hand, is just this genius, gentle soul that's brilliant. And he is so good at what, just like you said, we would have approached it from a much harsher standpoint. He'll approach it from a loving standpoint and actually get more and better effect than we will with the staff. So let's go through each of these real quick. The first one is strategize. Bottom line, guys, you got to fly 10,000 feet. So what I like to do, for instance, is right now what we're doing at Los Rios is we're planning out, we should have done it last year, but we're getting better at it. We tend to plan 4 months. So we do 4-month cycles, right? So we're always good at that. What we haven't been good at, to be honest, is we haven't been good at executing the full 1-year plan, just because we're so in it still. So even though it's a goal for us, so we talked the other day and it's like, okay, let's be a little bit better. Now we're about 6 months planned. And it's like, let's just get the rest of the year on the calendar and the rest of the year plan. We know, but we don't have it written down. So write it down, strategize, think about the future. One of the greatest gifts that I can give to any of us is do a 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan. I even have my boys do this because it just puts in perspective. What would I want it to look like in a year? Okay. What do I want it to look like in 3 years? Cool. 10 years. Now you're thinking totally differently, right? Because you're like at a different place in your life too, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, strategy is fly 10,000 feet and give yourself that gift of planning. And ideally, if you can, plan 4, 6, or a year out fully with your operation. So that way you take a lot of both your families and your staff will thank you for it because everybody loves clarity.
Yes.
So number 2, simplify. Keep it simple, stupid. They did studies that when you go to the supermarket, they had a bunch of teas. They had like, I don't know if it's Celestial Seasonings or something like it. And they had like 30 teas. And it was beautiful. And they were like, buy 2, get 1, whatever. The buy 2, get 1 worked, but people still had a hard time deciding. When they narrowed it to just a few options, they sold out of tea. Because then it was like really easy. When I only have 4 or 5 options, I can do that. When I have 12, I can't. So simplify things. The one mistake I see for most small lesson class business folks is you come into it thinking you have to have all these crazy rules. Remember this, you're making it up anyways. You might as well make it up good. Make it up simple. The simpler, the better. And you tell your customers the rules, not vice versa. We do not do makeups at our school. We're going on 15 years as a school. We have 8,000 square feet, 2 recording studios, 13 teaching offices, 3 rehearsal spaces, and a stage. And we've done all that without doing a makeup. So you don't have to do them. We do, however, do IOUs or makeups for teachers when they miss, but we try to make those up before they miss. So often teachers will let us know I'm going on tour in 3 months for a month. So we'll do those makeups way before they leave if we can. But just know you get to make up your rules. We made that rule up. So you make them up.
So simplify. It's easier for the clients to understand what's going on. Also easier to teach other people to do these things so that you don't have to enforce all these crazy rules. Yeah.
The staff development becomes easier by default. You're exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. Number 3, I have sales and marketing, and I don't want to go down that wormhole as much. You and I can go down the staff wormhole.
Sure.
But that wormhole, bottom line, guys, everybody says, oh, I just work on referrals. Really? Because if you just work on referrals, you're either teeny or you're a master marketer and you're pretending like you just work on referrals. Because to get those referrals takes effort. It means you have to actually cultivate your past and current customers. It means you have to be involved in the community. It means you probably have to do articles and SEO and things. It means that you probably at some point have some sort of community outreach or ads or connection to the local schools, or you're creating once-in-a-lifetime moments for students that then people talk about and newspapers write about. Anyways, you just can't have a business in a vacuum. You have to make sure that you have a way that you're connecting with others about your business. And so, just know that you have to get that part handled. If you're not good at it or you don't want to deal with it, well, like most of us, just know that there's tons of tools out there. There's a myriad of not only tools, but agencies that will work for very inexpensive, and just take us like 8% of your ad revenue. So let's say you're going to spend $1,000 or $2,000 a month. They're just going to take a little fee to help you run those ads.
Or a mom in your studio who used to work in marketing, public relations, and maybe wants to trade. You never know.
Have you done that?
Well, I've done it with other things.
That's brilliant.
But no. Mandy mentioned on a previous episode that all of her photos that she has in her studio, she's never paid for them. She's never paid her photography. She's done all in trade with parents who are in her studio.
Tyler did it with me. So Tyler and I have we're at Los Rios 15 years old. We've been officially partnered up for almost 11 of those 15 years. But I was there from the very beginning. Day one, when Tyler started teaching, I owned a print shop. So I was Tyler's drummer in his band. So I would love that he was doing it. So I'm printing stuff for him. And it wasn't just me. He had our friend Damien doing stuff. He had all of us because we were rallying around our friend. Yeah. And so if you're starting out, people will rally around you because everyone loves the arts and everybody wants to support us. So yeah, that's a big one. I love that. So that's, sales and marketing. Don't neglect it. Just know it has to be done regardless. So you might as well have friends, family, whoever help, but get her done. Another thing of working on the last two would be staff and brand. So the staff thing, you're an amazing trainer and coach to your staff. And I know that's been really important to you. So do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
That's a hard one. I will talk about training. One thing that it took me a long time to learn is if I don't have at least an outline when it comes to training new staff, I'm starting from the beginning every single time, right? So when I realized man, I'm always going to have to hire new instructors, maybe I should write this down. All these things that I tell them, maybe I should have an outline, and then maybe I should have a few bullet points for each of those outline points. And then, hey, you know what? Maybe I should just record this interaction that I'm having with this new hire. So that way, when I have another new hire next time, I've got a resource that I can give them in the front end rather than have to recreate all of this. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, we did that with our audition requirements. We recorded them and put them in Teacher Zone 10 years ago. We're still assigning the same audition. We made a couple tweaks to them, but overall, the same audition requirements for all 5 instruments for every season for advanced, intermediate, and beginner. We've codified it.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I didn't do it in the front end was because I didn't like to do it. I didn't want to have to take time out of what I already was doing to do this task, which is train a new hire, right?
You bought back your time by creating a system.
Yeah.
And I love the term playbook or SOPs, standard operating procedures. Playbook, though, to me is exciting because it's more in action. You're creating a playbook of how to train a teacher or how a teacher should see things to work in your organization.
Right.
And we did that, for instance, with our tours. We like to do in-person tours for families, and because we found that it really helps retention. So for us, trials haven't been as successful as the tours. So but we decided I did them for years, Tyler did them for years, and then we're exhausted about it. So then we had Phil start doing them, and then if Phil got over it, so then Phil and I we basically just codified Tyler, my, and Phil's script in one.
Yeah.
And now that script is being taught to advanced students, and now we have students doing it.
Amazing. Yeah.
So staff meetings are big. For those of you that have contractors, that's fine. You can figure out however complies with that. I like employees because then we can. So I have Monday operations meetings with our school staff. Then we have once a month with the whole staff, teachers and everybody. And then we do workshops, typically quarterly, where literally on the stage, we'll have teachers, like one of our teachers, Sharia. She's done lots of workshops with the teachers about how to connect more with students, about how to run a better group class, about how to make people listen more, how to ask better questions. So just ongoing staff training, ongoing making sure that they're feeling like they're part of something. That goes back to what we talked about earlier with the first one was strategize. Because if you already know ahead of time, then you can plan to have a nice speaker come in and work with your people. But if you don't know ahead of time, right, you're never going to look for the right person to come do it.
Right. Right.
So, and then the last one is brand. And I'm not a brand expert. I'm way too self-conscious to be a good branding. Tyler's better at it than I am, my partner. But the reality with brand is that it isn't about me. It is about you. It's about Michigan Rock School. It's about Los Rios Rock School.
Right. Although, going back to the idea of the solo instructor who doesn't want to hire anyone else. It can be about that person, right? It can be, but
good point.
In that instance, if what your goal is to just be that solo instructor, then maybe you want to farm that out. Maybe you want to find someone else who like understands what you are about that can present it to you and say like, okay, this is what I think you're about. I think that's a good instance to.
Yes. And that's brilliant, because then also you can, by having someone else help, it's a lot easier for someone else to talk about you.
Yes.
So yeah, you're right. Either way, your brand, even if it is you. So I misspoke. It isn't about us as far as being, when we're talking about building a community, you can have your name on everything. You can be a big part of it or whatever. But at the end of the day, the community will, make it bigger than just you doing the work.
Yes.
So I guess when I say it isn't about me, it's because I think in terms of community, right? I think in terms of like the impacts we're having on students that I've never even met potentially or something, and the other thing you think about with brand is that when a family does refer you, I mean, even if you're a solopreneur and you're getting lots of referrals, I think of my drum teacher growing up. He was a solopreneur and he was awesome, but he got tons of referrals because he made us all, I guess he had his brand that wasn't quite articulated, but we saw it a certain way. We saw a person that was deeply invested in his students. We saw a person that wanted his students to, perform a ton and do a lot of things. So just as you think about your brand, I just want you to think about the fact that brand creates value that's bigger than you. That's the bottom line, is that brand is something that people can equate to you, not just you. So equate to your school.
Yeah. And you had mentioned you're not an expert on branding. I interviewed a friend of mine, Adam Wilson. That was episodes, two-parter, 6 and 7. He would buckle at me calling him an expert in branding, but trust me, he's an expert at branding. Those are the episodes to listen to for understanding how to develop your brand and market your brand. Chris Bates, anything else before we bring this one home?
This is fun stuff. And you guys, we can all go down the wormhole on this constantly. But main thing, I think, is just to make sure that you're creating the life that you never want to retire from.
There you go. Because yes, you don't want to burn out, right? And I think that burnout comes from, again, going back to my story from the beginning. The burnout happens when you start as an instructor and you say, I want to build this into something else. And you continue to work as an instructor, but then also you take on this other job, which is the manager, right? And then next thing you know, you've got 2.5 full-time jobs that you can't keep up with, right? So
you box yourself into a corner and now you no longer like the thing that you used to love.
Right.
So make sure you build a career that you never want to retire from, that you're so excited to wake up for. And if you do that, then you're going to make a great impact in your students and you're going to build a really cool business.
Yes. And that all comes down to like really understanding what it is that you want personally from your business, what role you play in your business, having a plan for like, if you're not doing it, someone else is going to do it. What are your growth goals? And they don't have to be student numbers, right? All of that is about the plan. Chris, I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate you chiming in on all of this stuff. We're going to wrap it up for Rock School Proprietor Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Grateful
always
to be
great
here,
to
brother.
talk to you, Chris. Thanks. And we'll see you next time. A big thank you to Chris Bates for joining me on this episode. A running theme of our discussion was the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber and the concepts in it. Highly recommend that for any business owner. It's also great on audiobook and equally as insightful. If you have topic suggestions or questions, please contact us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. We'd love to hear from you and consider suggestions for the show. We've put together some free resources for teachers and studio owners over at rockschoolproprietor.com and a private Facebook group. Chris is part of that group. Performance-based music programs and rock schools. Sorry for the long name. Please join us over there. You can connect with me on social media. On Instagram, I'm at rock.school.proprietor. and John Kazicki on both LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. If you enjoyed this show and gained insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward, and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.